Welcome back. So today I wanted to do a final review of the Red Eye Chris Farmer wheels. How I like to ride wheels is in an anti-rocker setup, and I've always liked flat wheels because I feel like they've lasted longer for me. Anytime you ride anti-rocker, you have less wheels that are actually touching the ground, so that just means the ones that are in contact with the ground are eroding a lot faster. So I'm always looking out for new companies, what rides well, what doesn't ride well. Growing up skating, my favorite wheels were Mind Game, 4x4. I remember there was this time that I bought a pair of the Aaron Feinbergs, and they lasted me 2 weeks before they chunked out, and I was devastated because I absolutely love those wheels. And I remember just like landing sideways on a trick and just big old chunk of urethane popped off of them. So I'm always kind of hard on cheap wheels. I tried some of the ground control wheels that came stock on a pair of skates and decored them in like 3 days. So I'm always looking for quality urethane wheels. Typically how wheels fail for me is they decore, they chunk out. It's not very often that I'm able to ride a set of wheels down to the core. And part of the reason for that is like if I just land sideways on a trick, the urethane actually separates from the core and just causes it to debond. And I really haven't had that issue with these here. So Red Eye, they've been around for several years. This is my first time riding them. Started riding them in March. I have, I've been riding my Them Ritters, but I've also had a pair of black Them 909s that I've had these on, and they've been kind of my like switch off skates. So whenever I have like a hard session, liner's really sweaty, need to let them air out for an extra day, I've been riding the black Thems, and that just gives me a chance to just kind of alternate. So these wheels, they come 57 millimeter 92A. They're this awesome bright orange color. I'm kind of a sucker for really bright colors for wheels because I just like that look. It's kind of a nice break from the traditional white or black or anything else. And Red Eye, they make some pretty cool colors. Like they have some teal wheels. I think they had some John From's which were actually white, which I haven't ridden. But I really loved how bright this color wheel was. So one thing to note is because this is 92A, it's a pretty hard wheel to ride. And one thing to also note is that the harder the wheel, the faster you should be able to ride on these with less friction, because they're meant to kind of resist any wheel bite when you're skating ledges in a flat setup. But because these are 57 millimeter diameter versus like a 60 or above, they're going to be a little slower as well, which I honestly have never had an issue with. I'm so used to riding anti-rocker that I tend to just be able to pump faster, pump harder to get the speed that I need to do the tricks in an anti-rocker setup. So I've never really had an issue because it's like if the wheel's slower, I just work harder. It's I don't know. I'm weird, but I haven't noticed an issue. So one cool thing about this is the hubs in this are actually completely concealed. It's kind of hard to tell. This one has some of the leftover printing on it, but it has kind of an octagonal hub in there. I've been using like a little UFO spacers. They fit perfectly in there. Haven't really noticed a ton of like tolerance issues. So with wheels, you'll find that hubs can be a little out of tolerance, and that could prevent your bearings from pressing tight against the spacers. Could also be a tolerance issue with the spacers, with the bearings, and that can just cause wheels to rattle. This is the only wheel, if you can hear that, this is the only wheel of the four where it does rattle a little bit, but once I have them on the skate, I don't hear any kind of clacking from it. With these being 92A, they are quite hard. Like it's very hard to push on them, but they still have plenty of grip. And one thing I showcased this morning with the clips that I took today is that I skated nothing but transition. And part of the reason that I wanted to do that was to showcase, how a 92A wheel in an anti-rocker setup actually grips on really smooth concrete ramps. And it's great. I've never had an issue with these wheels sliding out, slipping. Not really a bad thing to say about these. Overall, I've noticed that there's been minimal wear, March to September. So I guess I've been skating them for about 5 months now. And when I took a measurement this morning, they were about 53 millimeters. So that tells me that these wheels are really durable. After seeing, 53 from 57, so that's about a 4 millimeter loss, is I'm starting to see some, I don't know if you can see it here, some just minor splitting of the wheel. Don't see any core yet, no chunking, so I'm going to continue to ride these a little longer until I start to see, some further deterioration where I want to call it quits. Kind of rule of thumb is if your wheel erodes 10 to 15%, then you should be looking at replacing it. You can definitely push them longer. I just find, since I've been riding them 909s, I find that if the wheels get too small, I end up start riding on the anti-rockers because I'm riding the Chroma anti-rockers, or I start catching on the frames, and that's partially because them 909 frames are so thick, so the plastic sits over further, so once you take a turn, that plastic has a tendency to touch down. Just because your wheel is so much lower, you lose this clearance between the bottom of the frame and the outside diameter of the wheel. Not a huge issue because once they start getting to that point, I tend to just replace them. Final thoughts on these after riding them for 5 months is they are a really great wheel, super solid, really grippy, never had an issue with these. Loved how bright the color scheme of these are, and I wish more companies would kind of make these really bright, really fun colors, because skates in general are usually a pretty bland color that's some shade of white, black, brown. USD, it seems like they've been doing some fun colors, but gods, I guess they have reds, but for the most part they're kind of hit or miss on colors. So if you want colors, then you got to put them in the wheels, and that's kind of why I chose these, is because I was like, okay, I'm riding black them frames or them skates with a dark gray frame, give it some color with the wheels. And would I buy red eye wheels again? Absolutely. What other final thoughts do I have on these? It's a good product. I'm super critical. I'm an engineer by nature. I look at failures in building components from a forensic perspective. That's part of my job. So I kind of look at products through a microscope, and I think they're good. The only thing that I've noticed is after 4 millimeter loss, the splitting. I'm going to continue to ride these and see how much more material I can wear down before these things actually fail. Don't know that I'll do a follow-up with them. I may just kind of plug them in with another video. But the splitting, I haven't noticed any traction. I haven't noticed any large chunks popping off. So overall, great wheel. Only good things to say. Thanks for checking in.